is needed with city manager, city clerk, question mark, city marshal, city police chief, question mark, building inspector, who is this? And in talking to Linda, I think she has, and you may be able to help me with this. She was appointed as the code enforcement, is that correct?
She was,
Well, I mean,
I think she's a planning and zoning administrator.
okay, all right,
That's
is
her
that
title.
administrator? Okay,
And
so
then she's code enforcement, I think.
you're code enforcement. Okay, all right, so we just need to identify that
Like what
as,
the official. or-
yeah. So, training, certified license,
That would just be what they have, I mean, what they're required to have anyway.
yeah.
In that section 3A, I'm sorry, but I don't agree with that. I would just leave it as is,
I think so too,
cut
because
top. Because those are two different things, cutting a tree and topping a tree. I mean, let's face it. Some of these things on here, the guidances that are on here. People could take and kill trees purposely. You know what I mean? So there's only so much you can do as far as language is concerned. You know, people can misconstrue things and, oh, well, I want to remove that tree, so I'll just say I'm gonna top it, and then you just cut enough off of it to where, I mean, there's only so much control we can have over things like that. You know, I mean, like I said, these things, these ordinances are guidance.
Yeah.
The trimming of a tree up to 12 feet from the ground.
so if you've got tree limbs, like we had a limb that was getting in the way of our satellite dish, so.
Well,
You
I
can,
think-
if it's 12 feet or below, you don't have to worry about getting a permit to trim off a limb like that.
and again, there's no fee involved with trimming. It's just a matter of filling out the application. And one of the reasons for that is who's doing the work. You know what I mean? That's what we gain by doing that is who's actually doing the work.
And under section 5, number 4. It identifies the person or the business entity who will cut, and then he's got tree cutters, persons or business. I mean, that's
Yeah,
just contradicting itself.
yeah.
All right, and should shrubs, underbrush, etc., be included here? And that's in section 5. Any landowner of the city wanting to cut, trim, top, or remove a tree or trees must first complete an application for a tree cutting. And that's what we're trying to get across here, so.
Right.
And again, if you're gonna cut, trim, top, or remove, that's same thing as shrub, underbrush. I mean, if it follows the ordinance, it's below 12 foot.
Mhm.
If it's more than 8-inch diameter, I mean, those are already in place.
Yep.
And he's section 5 also under section C. The city marshal shall we have 10 working days.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that one.
You want 5 working
Well,
days?
5 makes it hard if somebody's on vacation, they're gone for the whole week, that's, you're used up all your 5. But I think it should be less than 10.
Okay, do you have any comments for that? I mean, you would be the one going out and check, right? Okay, so you're good with 5?
I mean,
Okay.
I hate to see it where she's going on vacation or something. I mean, get you a fill-in when you're out.
I don't know, I haven't got to have a vacation since I came up here, so I'm not really sure how that works.
But I mean, I agree
That's not nice.
less than 10 would be ideal.
Okay.
Because sometimes the way it's going now, I mean, if you've been on their schedule and they call and say, hey, we can get you up, you need to get on up here.
Section 7 includes setbacks. In no instance will be removed more than 25% of the trees remaining outside the footprint. He wants to include setbacks there to be cut or removed unless approved by the city council. Have you had a chance to look at this and agree upon it?
I actually haven't been given any of this. This is the first I've seen.
Okay. What's your feelings on that? Do you want to include the setbacks there?
I mean, I thought it,
I
To me, it's a
think it
given.
naturally does.
I don't
Okay.
To
think
be
it
honest
spells
with you,
stuff out.
I mean, when, honestly, if the city attorney looks over this and he feels that he wants to tweak certain things like that, I mean, I'm a one for letting people do their jobs. I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I think that's a given though. That's included in.
I mean, I would include that 25%, the setback is their 25, is included. Because to me, if you add it, it would be more confusing as to, well, do you include the setback as your 25% or not? And just leaving it
Right.
out, it's your
Exactly,
property and what's left
exactly.
should be 25.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
I'm
I understand
with
that, yeah. Under section 8, again, he's asking who the building inspector, do you also do building inspector? Okay, so we just.
This
need
is
to-
for new construction.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
that's
it's
true.
And so I think that would just be the county, when the county comes out to do whatever they do for that.
Yeah, if it's a new one, they would be the one, if
Yeah.
it's something that is already.
Is it
needs to be looked
inside the
at,
city?
City, I would go look, but,
Oh, okay.
like you said, the new ones is the county inspector will come out.
The tree protection zones are like the buffers. What they're saying is if you have a group of trees that you want protected, whether it's one that you've said as a property owner you want to protect, or you're using as a buffer, what they don't want is they don't want the utilities to come through and dredge through the middle of your buffer and kill the trees by cutting the roots. So to me, it's common sense, but that's where they're going with that. As far as I'm concerned, the utilities normally tell you where it's gonna go. And if your buffer is in the way, you're gonna have to come up with a compromise somehow. But what they're suggesting is that if you have a buffer that you're using these trees, or we're gonna use as a buffer, they obviously don't want a ditch witch to come through and dig a trench, because that's the shortest route from point A to point B. If you can offset it a little bit or work with that, that's what they're suggesting. That's what they mean by protected tree zones.
Okay.
And also the slopes. Those are protected tree zones as well, depending on the slopes, which this also addresses. Did you all see the section 12, the 30 days for removal?
I did. I don't necessarily agree with that.
It seems like a pretty long time. I mean,
It does. I think we should stick with 14 and,
if somebody needs an extension, they can file for it.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think
I think we should stick with the 14 days, and if somebody needs another 7 or whatever, that's not a problem, but we wanna keep it at the
updated
14
and
days,
move in progress.
exactly.
And I think that goes with the natural disaster part of it too. Like, I think Lindsay was more talking about
Yeah, the
weather
natural
related with a tree coming down with the weather. Like, we had one fall during a snowstorm a couple of years ago. You know, I think that would fall into here if you couldn't get to it because you don't live here full time or something like that. I think that's where you could get that extension
yeah.
to get somebody to clean it up.
Now, that's a good question too. If you're not on duty, let's say, and a tree hit a house and it was on power, whatever the situation. Would Raven come or Haversham for that matter? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, if I'm
They
not here,
just
one
come
of
and
the
just
two.
make a quick report on it and.
Yeah, if I'm not here, or I don't have somebody on, or I can't come, one of the counties will show whichever side it's on.
I mean, it's just a simple report, but it allows us to go on,
Yeah.
or whoever, to go on with what they need to do as far as emergency. Okay, great.
So we can leave that one at 14
I think so. How do y'all feel
with an
about that?
extension. If. Do we want to say an emergency or what would be the word that we would use in there? Ask for an extension due to,
You just need to follow up waiver for an extension and do it as just a case by case basis. So, I think something, most of the time you should be able to clean it up that far. You've already planned to do it. It's gonna happen. But
Yeah,
I think there are gonna be sometimes where it's not gonna be feasible, that
and
they do
that's
need it.
something that we can, I mean, if they're gonna have an attorney look at it,
yeah,
that's definitely something that he's gonna wanna look at. As far as the back and forth of who can and who can't stuff, we don't get involved in that, so.
Right.
They can figure that out.
okay. So with those changes and what we've discussed tonight, is there anyone that wants to make a motion to submit this to the city council? With said
I have
changes?
a comment.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, it's on clear cutting. That first line, or the second line, it said shall be preserved insofar as practical and reasonable. To me, those are such general words.
So what section are you in? So, quit cutting.
Clear cutting.
Okay, and what was your question? there?
Well, to me, I'm just commenting that the words practical and reasonable can be interpreted differently by people. That some words that would, so that would preserve the rhododendron and the mountain laurel. Because a builder could say, well, it's practical. And it's reasonable.
Yeah, and those are something that probably would just be a word exchange from the attorney, I would think, but I mean, it's good that you highlighted that. Because what I think is reasonable may not be reasonable.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's understandable.
And have the attorney make a suggestion to make it a stronger word, but a more definitive word.
Could say something and, you know, preserve insofar as being by written in this ordinance. I mean, it just takes out the guessing game there.
Well, and the other thing I think they're trying to talk about here is they think that that's the preservation of the ferns and the wildflowers and the mountain laurel is important,
Mhm.
but there is a placement value. And when you start talking about home ignition zones where you have life safety issues or roads for accessibility, that's gonna get overridden at that point. And the- and the
Or your
mount-
house.
Yeah, yeah, oh, and the mountain laurels are gonna go down on the list.
Right.
What they want you to do is to take into consideration that you're not gonna go out on a part of your land that you've decided to save the trees and just start ripping the laurel out at that point. To
Well,
me,
that's what I'm trying to
you know, and
prevent.
I think, well, I think that language would probably help that, which I
I don't know,
understand.
that sounds very, like we said, what your definition of practical is different. I mean, and all I'm trying to do is preserve the mountain laurel.
No, I understand that.
And this could also be identified in the soil and erosion as far as how much they could take out. Because
Yeah,
that's what
the
it's
point,
saying,
too.
it's,
How much do you take out?
yeah, but I think you would go to the soil and erosion ordinance to look and see, or land disturbance, and it should identify it there.
Yeah, I'm not sure they do. I have to look the state. I have to look the state to see what it says.
But you know, most builders up on the mountain, they're very considerate of that. On Hickory Nut. You know, they are around me,
Yeah, well, it'd be nice to have that all the time, but
but I know.
yeah, it's for the one that doesn't. So,
So that's something I'd be, maybe the attorney could come up with better wording.
yeah.
I can't think of a word.
Are we gonna address the letter too from the?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking at-
Yeah. Yes.
was that the one you read?
Yeah, I believe that was.
So that's the question.
You all have a copy of that?
Yeah, it was included in your packet.
Must have moved it somewhere else.
I know.
Okay.
I'll leave them.
All right, so the objections to the Tallulah Forestry ordinance, and this is from Mr. Irvin. Would you like to speak on his behalf?
Please.
If you would, just state your name.
Okay, I'm Marsha Brock and I work with J&D Urban Holdings and we would just, appreciate some consideration on the Gilmore County tree ordinance that we submitted for you guys to review. There are some similarities in the one from Gilmore County as well as the one that you guys have been looking at in the work sessions that you have as far as 8 inches in diameter, up to a 4-foot height. The main differences we saw is instead of, once you cut the driveway and cut your pad for building, then everything else is 25%. It just allows for 50% altogether. And then there also was altitude, anything above 2,200 feet, which that does include the top of Hickory Nut Mountain, because I believe the altitude at the very top is like 23.5
That's like it's at 2,000 right above my house, so.
of your house. So that would include anything,
Mine's
2,200
23.
and up is where, how they determine their tree preservation. And we just, wanted wanted some consideration there because the tree ordinance is gonna affect everyone. And then another point that, we think needs some consideration is what about infestation, if you have pine beetles or if something happens and then all of a sudden a lot of the timber is infected and it's gotta be cut.
Yeah.
So that needs some discussion. So. But, as far as being, opposed to, what was presented, we do object to it, but, we did send in a recommendation as was discussed at the last, meeting. So, we just appreciate, some consideration there.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I actually liked the part that they had on there about the establishment of the protected mountain district. I feel like it did what we wanted it to, like it said how we wanted to reflect the sled part top and the height with the ridges and things. I really like that part of it.
Yeah.
I thought that was really something that we could,
Yeah,
I
there's
get it
parts
now.
of it that obviously are even redundant. I mean, some of the things with the body of it, I found the same land disturbance ordinance for Sky Valley. It's the exact same word for word.
Mhm.
I noticed that.
So it's basically a generic, land disturbance that's been tweaked. And I think there are some things in there that, we could consider adopting in ours. I mean, obviously, when people take the time to look something over and then they have suggestions, I obviously don't get in the habit of just dismissing that. So,
no, and I really like the way they spelled it out about the elevation.
mhm,
I
it's
feel
a
like it was
little more
much
clear,
clearer than what
actually.
ours was.
I agree.
So I would like to add that to ours. As far as the infestation goes,
That's
that is a
actually,
concern for me too, and I feel like that would,
well, if y'all read the Georgia Forestry, they actually have quite a few programs that do address that.
and I think that would be an emergency situation.
If you
When you come in to
see,
permit, that we move it up a little faster.
well, and we could, and quite frankly, if you read through their website, they have place, and we have contact information now where we have people that we can contact relatively quickly. And I think as a town, rather than just one person in that town, the officials contacting them may be able to step it up a little bit. I think with things like that, most important is if anyone sees anything like that, it has to be brought to attention quickly. And obviously, if you see something, say something, that goes for a lot more than just law enforcement. It's an important part of everybody protecting, because obviously it's done a lot of damage.
And I think that goes with, having, an emergency caveat too, for if a tree is got struck by lightning and it's starting to look like it's about to come down, and you want to get it like, where it's gonna be across the road, or, not just necessarily on a house, where we push to get that done a little quicker.
So you don't just drive by and look at it and wait for it
Well,
to
and
fall.
follow, yeah,
Yeah,
I think we
agree.
should have some kind of an emergency situation, because I feel like that's gonna be more of our emergency situations necessarily than an infestation, but I do believe that we need to have something that moves faster.
What would that be?
I think we just, when we call and do the permitting process, we just say, hey, we need to get this one through as fast as we can, and here's why. And the county extension agent usually will come out too and look at your trees and tell you if your trees are dead, or they'll come out and do that for free.
Mhm.
Or at least they did, where we from, they would come out and look at that for free and tell you, give you that idea. So that takes advantage of something that's not costly for a homeowner to be able to get done too, and present that with your application and say, hey, we want to get this pushed forward faster.
And they also, on the forestry website, they recommend that you call them and ask them their ideas and what they think if you're a property owner. So they encourage that.
Yeah, I think they would come out, but from one property owner to another, if you had a dead tree and I was fearing that it was gonna be on my property or land on my house, I could give you a written notice and it would put the legality on you to be responsible for it. So, I mean, that's the way it was, and I'm assuming that that's still, it puts the burden on you to be that responsible party. So if I put it to you in writing and say, I'm afraid your tree's gonna fall, you need to get it done quickly. Because otherwise, you're responsible for the damage done to my house, if it so happened.
Mhm.
So I think that
Well,
the
and-
quicker the better, but I think written in here is a good.
yeah, I think that's exactly right. So with that all being said, are we ready to submit this as it's written? Or,
With changes and the additions to mountain protection and the infestation.
I don't know that we necessarily have to specifically say infestation, but just, that emergency, applications completed and, with an emergency, we'll try to move just quicker than the time or whatever, just to, I think we owe that to everybody to get emergency situations move
Mhm.
faster than just, I want to have these trees cut down because that's what I see. And the 50%, 25%, I think some of our lots are so small that 50% would be a bad thing.
well, the thing is that the
But some of them,
25,
yeah,
the 25% is after the footprint has already been established. And that footprint includes a 60-foot buffer around an established unit. So if you have a building that's 1,500, 2,000 square feet, now you're also considering a 60-foot buffer
all the way around the whole.
around that building that's being considered. And then on top of that, you're gonna talk about a percentage of the trees after that can be cut. That's starting to get a little bit much. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I think, the 60-foot buffer is pretty good. And I mean, obviously, the smaller the square footage on a building, that starts to bring that in a little bit, but there's reasons why they're asking for these things, these buffers in these zones, because the insurance companies mandate it. Why? Because it's cost them money. Because they have structures that have burnt. So in this day and age, we're able to look at history and go with the rules that have, I think, honestly, I mean, we can look at that, but 25%, I think, after everything has been considered.
It should be.
Yeah, and again, if, as far as I'm concerned, if you build a home and you have your property and you've taken all the considerations and you're all done and you get the CO, and the following year, you want to build a shed and you submit that footprint for that shed, we're back to the 25% rule again. Now, you know what I'm saying? So there has to be some pullback on that, because I mean, honestly, you theoretically could cut down just about every tree on your property as it is.
Yeah.
Considering the 60-foot, and then another footprint on top of that, if you were to put a storage building or a separate building. So I don't know, I mean, there's a lot to consider about it.
So you're talking about a lot that's an acre, you're talking about small lots.
Or larger, but the 25% rule is what's left after what they call a footprint, and this is relating to new construction. So in other words, you own a lot that has all the trees still on it, it's undeveloped. And you come in and you decide your house is going here and your driveway is going here. And you have a 60-foot all the way around that home. That's a fire zone, protected zone. After that footprint's all established, look at the remaining part of those trees, and you can't cut more than 25% of the remaining of those trees. And on an acre, that's not gonna be allowed, honestly. Now, if you have 2 acres or more land, then obviously you have more trees to deal with. You know what I mean? But there has to be a general rule for, I mean, we can't have considerations different for someone that has a 1 acre as opposed to a 10 acre. So, you know, I mean,
Yeah, my lot's an acre, just over an
well,
acre.
most are, I just, there are some larger lots. And I can understand where people, you know, may want. But those other outbuildings, like I said, that's another footprint, so. I mean, they're not establishing a condition on footprint. They're not saying that you can only do this. You can only have this for a driveway. They're giving minimum setbacks. You know?
That's
So-
good, that's good. I mean, so. Okay.
And the barrier too, between the lots, that's,
Well, and that's something that I think obviously has to be addressed a little bit more. There's been some talk about as far as the difference between the fences and the natural buffers. But I mean, personally, I'd rather see a natural buffer
me too,
rather than a bunch of fences, but you know,
I agree. We don't see a lot of fences up here, really.
no, but I guess they're necessary in certain. I mean, because the thing is not everything is one situation. We have a whole town. So that's what they're trying to consider, you know, somebody wants to,
Yeah, if we had a flatter backyard, we'd have a fence.
yeah, I mean, you know.
If we had a flatter backyard, we would have a fence. Because
Yeah,
I could hang my dog, I could hang my kids.
sure. There's a lot
But
of
it's
properties around that would want fencing.
Yeah, we would have one.
But I'm just saying up here, you don't see, and that's probably one of the reasons. It's not flat.
Is anyone ready to make a motion on the ordinance with the additions and the extractions? Okay. Second,
That's a second.
all in favor? All opposed?
So what's the next step?
We would just submit it to the city council and then they would make the final decision.
And their
On our
decision may be that they
recommendations.
want to talk about it and discuss it, they may want to spend time on it,
They have another hearing.
then we'd have to do the whole
Yeah.
thing.
The
And then
whole
there'll be a
process.
public hearing.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is just a recommendation from this board to the lawmakers. Okay. So you're in favor? Okay. All in favor? For new business, this is the ordinance to amend section 1501 of the zoning. In the public hearing, we've had speakers in favor of this change. And again, this would just be a recommendation on this amendment made to the city council from this board to the next. Any discussion? Okay, anyone wants to make a motion? Christie, anyone second, all in favor? We'll submit that as the amendment. Section ordinance to amend section 2004 of the zoning. I know that we had one to speak in favor, but a change of 300 square foot on the structures or accessory buildings. Again, we're talking about someone who wants to build a doghouse or a shed or one more shed.
So are we saying to change it from 64 to 300?
Yes,
Well, that
ma'am.
was one of the comments. that
Comments,
was made.
yeah.
Okay.
I think that the spirit of what we were trying to do here was not necessarily to have a building, but to be able to build a doghouse or be able to put up a kid's playhouse. I think that's why it was small, not necessarily a structure that you could store stuff in, but that was my understanding.
Mhm, I agree.
That's my understanding too.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say 300.
Right.
I
So
think it
we,
was just to avoid those things, and anything else needed to happen.
okay.
But I think with the permitting process, you don't necessarily have to have one if it's not. Doesn't have electricity for like a shed, maybe, I don't know,
Yeah, that gets.
there's
kind
a,
of-
with the county, I think it's, yeah,
Yeah, actually, that's kind of weird.
but, yeah, I think this was just to be able to put up a doghouse or put up a kid's playhouse kind of thing.
Okay. So anyone wants to make a motion as written to recommend to the city council in section 2004? Okay, any second? All in favor? Okay. We'll send that as a recommendation to the city council.
Okay, I'm sorry, did you say that you are recommending the 300 or?
No, this is as written on the 64.
Okay, great. Yes.
All right, and we would like to open the floor for any discussion. Anyone would like to speak? Yeah. All right, motion to adjourn, second. All in favor? Thank you for coming.